This is beautiful. This here gave me the warm fuzzies when I saw it. I mean, this made me smile. This was great. This is fantastic. This is a wake up for some to reality. So I read this article here from Business Insider. Millennials and Gen Z are giving up on their core values and investing more like boomers. Oh my God, like boomers. How dare they? They can't, but they're giving up their core values. They've decided they'd rather have money. It starts here by going, the turbulence of the economy over the last 2 years has many people rethinking how they invest money. And now environmental and social issues are paying the price. Well, that's because they realize that they want you to do these things, but nobody cares about you. Because the people that are wanting this and pushing this, it's an industry to them. It means nothing else. They're getting rich off it. You're not. So then it goes on here that the Millennials and Gen Zers, who traditionally have been more supportive of social responsible investing, but many are now echoing the cautious approach traditionally associated with baby boomers. Congratulations, Millennials and Gen Zs that are out there in the workforce already. You now align more with the baby boomers than anybody else. You know, with inflation still high and ESG investing becoming a political target, which it is now a hot potato, fewer young investors are expressing strong concern about things like the environment and social issues, and they are also less willing to sacrifice investment gains in support of those initiatives. In other words, they care more about money than they do these ideology investments. They'd rather make money. And can you blame them? No, because nobody's going to look after you later in your life but you. There's not going to be anyone looking around. You think that they teach all this stuff and you do this and you invest in these things and you push this stuff and you adopt this ideology and you got nothing at the end, that they're going to come along and they're going to say, thank you for helping us push what we wanted. And we're going to look after you, and here's a house, and we're going to feed you, and we're going to take care of your health care. Get real. They don't give a damn about you. They don't give a damn about anybody. And you talk about it, and in the survey, preferences for ESG investing among Millennials and Gen Zs, now aged between 18 and 41, plummeted significantly compared to the year before. Now, people who responded were very concerned about environmental issues, dropped from 70%, this age group, 18 to 41, in 2022, 70% were very concerned about environmental issues. In 2023, that dropped all the way down to 49%. Down to 49%. That's almost a third dropping off on what they say. And then you had similar drops were also seen for social governance issues. Younger investors who are very concerned about social issues dropped from 65% in 22 to 53% in 23. And governance issues fell from 64% down to 47. Now, when you're younger, everybody does, even every generation, when you're younger, care more about social issues because you get this grand ideology that everything can be, you know, la 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 land and everything is Shangri-La and you can make it that way. And it doesn't work. We all learn as you get older, it doesn't work. And I would bet anything that as Gen Z gets older, these numbers change even more over the next few years. Absolutely, they will. The millennial and Gen Z investors' preferences in 23 were much closer to those of baby boomers compared to 22. While a gap still exists between the younger and older investing groups, many more millennial and Gen Z investors now align with the more common responses among boomers, being somewhat concerned or not concerned about these issues. Again, you are aligning more with the oldest of the generation that are out there in control. How does that feel, knowing that you are already shifting into what you stared that you didn't want to do and follow along with the status quo, but you are already shifting into that way of thinking because you've realized and you figured it out when you get out there and you get working and it's tough and you talk about how you can't afford to live and you need 2 or 3 roommates to pay for a place. You got to adopt that other way of thinking if you want to get ahead. All right. Because you got here. The boomers, who are 58 and above, everybody seems to think that they know where it is, but the youngest boomers are still pretty young. Their idea is relatively unchanged in 2023. For those that were very concerned about the environment, social, and governance issues, they were 34, 33, and 26% respectively. And all three values were within 1 to 3 points of the 2022 figures. So they didn't change much because they already had that balance on how they felt about things. Then similar drops were also seen for social governance issues, with young investors who are very concerned about social issues dropped from 65% to 53%, and governance issues fell from 64% to 47%. So more young people are caring less and less about governance issues. And that falls in line with when you are really upset with the government that is currently operating things and in control, you tend to care less and less about governance issues because you don't care or like the people that are in charge, which does become a problem. You should care always, because if you don't want them in charge, then you find somebody else you want to support, you believe would be the right person, and you should have concern on governance issues, but you should be very skeptical of anything they tell you. And here's where we get to an interesting one, because Gen X, who are 42 to 57 years old, also dropped in all three categories. Also, their drop was to a lesser degree. I mean, those who were very concerned about environment, social, and governance issues were 41, 42, and 30% in 23, down from 51, 54, and 53. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to governance, and it was like 30% down from 53, Gen X is extremely skeptical of government altogether. And here's the thing too. Fewer young investors want the fund managers to influence ESG. One of the study's authors, Amit Saru, a Stanford Graduate College of Business, pointed to the growing reluctance of young investors to risk personal wealth for ESG issues, citing decreased confidence and increased caution in the stock market, which I absolutely get. Because when you get young investors telling you that they're much less willing to lose personal money to see progress made against issues such as climate change, sustainability, and labor conditions, and diversity in the workplace, with their confidence down, investors are more cautious about risking their personal wealth to support stakeholder issues. People realize that they're not going to risk their personal self for these things in the end, because these things usually don't apply to them. They want everybody to back and invest and risk when you don't get the big payoff. Because then you get the economic pessimism seems to be a significant driver of this change. I mean, millennials now expect lower stock market returns in forecasting an appreciation of 11.8% over the next year, down from last year's 15.9%. Look, I'm not a big stock market guy, and I believe that most of it is completely manipulated and artificial, 100%. But anything you invest in where you can pull a 10%, 11% return on your money in a year is huge money. Now, it don't seem like much if you don't have much in there and you're like me and you can't put a whole lot in. But it seems like to me, that's a huge return. If you're pulling in a 10, 11% increase. But you're getting 15, 16. I mean, you're getting up into the old junk bond thing and those type of return rates. I mean, anytime you see any type of return rate like that, they're supposed to scream at you that maybe it's a Ponzi scheme. Sometimes I almost believe that the stock market itself is the greatest Ponzi scheme ever to exist, because it only works as long as people are still putting money in. And isn't that essentially an investment Ponzi scheme? If people stop putting more new investors and new money in, the other people can't get paid out. I know he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm just saying that's my personal view on it. I always felt that way, that it just wasn't really worth the risk. So then the survey asked how important it was to investors that a fund manager use its size and voting power to influence social policies or practices. Okay. Of the Gen Z and millennial respondents, 62% said it was very important or extremely important. That is still a strong majority, but a substantial drop from 82% in 2022. Okay. Similar drops were seen for environmental and governance issues. That is a massive drop. And of the Gen Z, 50% called the influence of fund managers on social issues very important or extremely important, down from 66%. And again, boomers were relatively unchanged, dropping from 43 to 40. So boomers didn't change a whole lot. Almost inconsequential, 1 to 3 points on anything. Gen X had a little bit of a drop. But millennials and Gen Z have made a dramatic shift over the last year on how they see these things, how they're investing in these things, and what they're willing to actually risk in the end. Because some of the older ones are starting to see that they put in the risk, but there's no return. And now they're bucking that trend and going against it. Study co-author David Larker, also of Stanford Graduate School of Business, called the decline in support for ESG over the past year among young investors striking, and wrote that it appeared they are less willing to put their money where their mouths are. Of course they are. Most people don't want to actually risk. More investors are unwilling to personally bear the risk of advancing environment and social change. They might want conditions around them to change, but they don't want it to come out of their pocket. Well, holy crap. If that isn't something that the older people have said all the time about when the younger ones want these changes and say, well, who's going to pay for it? And now they're starting to see that it's not worth my risk anymore. I'm not paying out of pocket for this change, even though I want it. Now, and of course, indeed, young investors in particular were much less willing in 23 to support ESG initiatives if it meant lower investment gains. In 2022, the average respondents were willing to sacrifice 6 to 10% of their portfolio for ESG investments. In 2023, that average is just 1 to 5. So that at the high end, that cut all the way down to 50%. On the low end, that could have cut as much as 90%. And then you got ESG has become the 4-letter word in some circles. Absolutely. It is around here. It is to me. I can't stand it. But you got the lower confidence in the stock market, the economic pressure from factors like inflation, higher interest rates. It's reshaping investment priorities among younger generations. However, there may be another factor, politics. Absolutely. The term ESG first appeared in 2005 with the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment, a move to add ESG issues into investment analysis. This is a lot of dry crap. The push for ESG investing didn't start to take off until the late 2010s, and by early 2023, the ESG funds market totaled more than $6 trillion. But in 2023, the term became a hot-button topic in the political realm, with Republican lawmakers introducing anti-ESG legislation. Tim Paradis and Alice Nichol of Business Insider explained in December just how controversial the topic of ESG investing has become. I mean, for its critics, ESG might as well be a 4-letter word. Paradis and Nichol wrote, it represents woke capitalism. It propels as for profit nanny state. And it is. That's exactly what it is. Okay, I think a lot of companies still have it baked in, but they don't call it ESG anymore, Elson said. It's like a dirty word. Okay, so now they're uncertain whether the reduced support for this is a transient phase or the new norm. And it very well could be a transient phase. It's that the pendulum went so far one way, it's starting to come back, and it could stabilize and then slowly drip back the other way. That's just the nature of these things. We could learn more if sentiment shifts back towards the investment strategy once the economy fully recovers. And a lot of it is, it does a lot have to do with the economic issue, because if you got to struggle harder to get what you want, you're going to be a hell of a lot less concerned with all these other things on the peripheral that actually have no real effect on your day-to-day life. It's not going to change how much your groceries cost. It's not going to change how much your rent or mortgage is. It's not going to change how much you get paid, unless, of course, you fall on the right end of that ESG, right? If there's not a return to strong support for ESG among millennial and Gen Z investors, it probably signal a fundamental change in how younger generations prioritize their investments. The days when ESG was a defining feature of millennial and Gen Z investment strategy might be giving way to a more pragmatic return-focused approach, aligning them more closely with the investment philosophies of older generations. Oh, they really avoided saying that boomer word, didn't they? That's where that is. They've had enough. They realize that there's no reward for this risk, and they're not going to sacrifice out of their own pocket for these ideas and this ideology. Now, how much farther back does this swing? Is it going to drop right off? Is ESG going to be completely dead as far as an economic model? God, I hope so. Anyway, that is it for now. This is Drac saying, I'll talk to y'all later. I'll see you on the stream later, and peace out, everyone.